Hello everyone. Today we're going to do the jig grinding of these holes for our low profile sine plate. And the most critical thing that we need to hit here is the 4 inches from the center line to the center line. And so I wanted to check because this we have a Moore #1 jig grinder. I only use this a couple times. At my full-time job we have a Moore #3. I'm definitely a lot more comfortable with that. And there's some things that are not working on this right now. On the automatic feed, if I remember right, it will go down but it will not come back up. So I'll be doing this by hand, as well as I think that the spindle itself may have a lot of wear in it. It just does not have a lot of strength, and so we're going to use a small diameter mandrel. It's a CBN. I got a 220 grit plated mandrel that we'll use. The finish won't be as nice as a stone, but this again is a prototype. If you're going to use a mandrel like that, you can actually, if you wanted to, if you had some barrel laps, you can grind that in and get it within a tenth or two and then lap it out. I think this one though, because you don't have a full circle, the material is going to come out of this spot right here, so it'd probably be a hard lap. It'd best be to grind this all the way out. And one of the things that brings up another thing is when you're grinding and you're coming through, a lot of times you see jig grinders are going quite fast, but every time that stone comes down and hits his side, it's going to deflect it a little bit, and as it comes out. So I'm going to be just taking a slow feed going in and out because I want to get this. This is going to be important for the strength in it. I want to get that so it runs nice and true with everything as I can. Well, I'm going to be using the cube as you've seen in many of our other videos. I have some of my hardware set up that I'll be able to hold this on, but before I do that, I'll need to establish with their digital and see how accurate it is. So I have a 4-inch gauge block set up, and then I have like a 300 gauge block rung kind of tight on that side, and I got it set up so it indicates real nice on the end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish 0, and I already checked it, but I'm going to just show you how I've done that. I'm going to establish a 0, and then we're going to wind over until we hit that, and if the digital and everything is just right, that should be an exact 4 inches. It's an older machine with this Sony. It's an older digital unit. We have it about 65 degrees in here. I don't know if this glass scale and this cast iron, if the coefficients are right. Maybe at different temperatures we'll get different readings, but we're going to be out just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to set my indicator at 0, just traveling up and down just to make sure that everything is straight. And what we'll do is we'll set our digital at 0. We'll come up. Let's see, try to get it right on the 0. And you can see we're at 4 inches and 8/10 on the digital. And that's where I've been getting 4 inches, 8/10 to 4 inches and 1/10. And so when I set this up and I grind on the first hole, I'll set 0, and I'm going to move it over 4 inches and 8/10 and grind another hole out. And hopefully that will establish very nice the 4 inch. Other ways you can do it, you can grind the holes, leave them a couple thou small, pop your pins in, take it off to the granite, check it, and make your adjustments there. But I think this will work pretty well. We'll find out. And so anyhow, that's how I was checking to see how well the digital is going to work with this setup. Another thing I want to show you is we made this piece. It's a split ring. It's got a place for this to mount this noga with, and this goes right around the spindle collar, and you can tighten it down, and that works real nice because you can use that to indicate your parts in, to get your zero set and everything. It works really nice, and so something simple enough to make. Just like say, you tighten up on the screw over here, and it pinches it on, and it holds it real nice. What we're going to do is we're going to take this mandrel and put that in. What I had to do with this mandrel, I threw a lathe tool in the vise in the mill, and you've seen other videos where I've done that, and I had to relieve this neck a little bit further because what I want to be able to go all the way through. In case that it's heavier plated on this side, I wanted to go all the way through with it and be able to get the full depth from the back side there. So I probably should have went just a little bit more, should have checked it that way, but I think we're going to get by with it. I want to chuck up as tight on that wheel as I can, keep the flexure so it doesn't flex as much. Remove these gauge blocks. And I have this set up with some of the hardware that we've built. Have it set up, I even have a stop in case I wanted to set this up. I ground this back side. That way you can set it up, go up to the stop, clamp it in, and that way you can move it in and out and be pretty close to the area that you established. I have to reset this clamp. And what we're doing is establishing the angle so that the clamp is coming down like that rather than like that. And the reason you do that is if your clamp is going like this, you're not going to clamp very tight, and plus you're going to alter, it'll move your part on you as well as not clamp tight, and it will create problems. You don't have to reef this very tight. You just want it snug so it's not going to move. If you really put a lot of force on your clamps, a lot of times you can actually deflect things a little bit. So you want to use as little as you can. I'm going to come over here and just roughly line up on the hole and drop the head down some. Actually, I think I'll establish the head height right now. Because when I get the stroke all the way down, and the reason I want to have it set that way is because I'll be using gauge pins to check my hole size with, and it gives me room to get my gauge pins in. If I drop the head lower, and then sometimes you got to move out of the way to get your gauge pins in. This way, once I get established grinding, I can stay right on the size, use the gauge pins. This is right now about a 239, there's about 10 thousandths grind stock in there. So you have adjustments inside here. I can show you that. It's kind of like a boring bar set, boring head setup. You got a nice precision dovetail unit that will slide this head in and out, and that's how you get your rough size of your holes established. I like to take and start up here. This unit, or this knurled knob right there, is a real fine feed that activates that. I like to start up where I got my almost bottomed out on the low side here, so as I spin it, it moves a wheel out, makes the hole bigger. I like to do that so I got a lot of travel in there and I don't have to adjust anywhere in between. In other words, do the coarse adjustment here and the fine adjustment there. So, oops. Your T-handle wrenches, which I have at my full-time job, not here, works a lot better for this kind of stuff. But I'm just going to get this down and do just a rough alignment. There, it's spinning pretty close. There's a rough alignment. And just reset our digital to 0. And what we'll do at this point, we'll set this unit up, and we want to line it. We want to get it lined with the adjustment head, so if I do use it for making adjustments, it's in line with the direction that the head is going out, and it just works a lot better. On a jig grinder, you want to get your slop worked just like you would on a mill. There's slop there, so you always want to approach things in the same direction. So there, in that direction, we're about 0, 0. That hole actually come out quite round. I'm surprised by the shape of it and how thin it is. And as you can see, we're pretty darn good right there. And what I'll do is I'll just hit 0, and let's see. On this machine, I'm not sure where the locks are. On the table, I only used it a couple times, but we'll see if we can grind and if it stay good, just like where we're at. I can come to the part right now, and you can see I can freely hit that, so I can do the rough adjustment until I feel that wheel just rubbing. Okay, just rubbing there, so I'm going to back it off a little bit, maybe about quarter to half turn. We're going to get this boot back up in place, help keep the grinding grit away from some of those precision parts. This lever controls the RPMs of that, and I want to go probably a little bit slower again, because when we get to this side, I'm not going to be grinding a full circle, and I want to give that chance as it hits. I want it to grind more. Okay, And let it wind up a little bit. And you'll hear the air compressor will be kicking on and on, making a little noise as we go. But basically now we're coming all the way through and we're not hitting. We'll wind this and it will feed in. Feed in at the bottom and work up. This will give me 1 thou on the diameter, the halfway mark. If I go from 20 to 30, it will give me 2 thousandths on the diameter. Right there, that's a real nice fit for a 246, I believe it was. 245. So I have about 5 thousandths to go on that hole. But before I go any further, there's one thing I forgot to do. Really an important step. I just put this part on here and assume that it's going to be good. I need to run my indicator across here just to make sure I'm lined up good. So we'll do that before we go any further. We're setting at 00 on the digital. There's two things I want to establish. I want to establish that it's running straight this way. And we're less than 1/10. Hit something there. Hit my clamp. And it looks like we're within 1/10 there. And it looks like we're about perfect there. So it's located real nice. Come back to 0. And we'll get the slop, we'll go past 0 and come back up to it. So that we got our slop working the same way every time. We'll go past 0, and we'll come back up to it. What we're going to do, I got 2 dowel pins. I got a box of dowel pins this size, and these dowel pins will vary a few tenths sometimes. So I kept measuring with our amp, a very high precision instrument, until I got 2 pins that were within 25 millionths of each other, and we'll fit those at this unit right here, and that's what will work as our rolls. They're a little bit longer, which is going to be nice because when I fit them in there for measuring, it'll be good, but they'll eventually be ground down where they'll be just maybe a couple thousandths less than the thickness here. And the grinding head that I use at my full-time job is way more powerful than this. I either have to get this one rebuilt, or I'll have to see if I can find a used one maybe on eBay. You can find these jig grinders quite cheap. We got this one with the digital delivered right to the our front door over here for $2,500. I've already seen some pretty nice looking number 3s for 10,000 and under. I've seen some of them that look pretty good for around 8,000. Number 3s, those are a real nice manual jig grinder. And Moore makes probably one of the best grinders out there. We're just going to blanket a little bit and see if we got a good even thousandths off of there. Yeah, that feels real good. That's got just about an exact thousandth from where we're at. We're at 246. Taking a thou at a time, it'll be 247. If I move and grind this hole, which I plan on doing, and the hole is off a tenth or so, I'm not going to be concerned. It'll be plenty accurate enough to use in the mill applications. If I want to get it closer than that, I can always make some pins and I can grind that out a little bit bigger, and I can fuss around with it until I get it just as fussy as I want. The nice thing about the plated wheels is you don't have to dress them. The resin bond wheels, you can dress them, and I like those even better, but this is what was available. And these tend to grind a little bit more free, and with the head being weak as it is, then they actually work pretty nice for this. If you have a full contact round hole like this, you can actually get it within a tenth or two, and you'd be able to lap this side out. This side would be a different story. I believe we should be at 248 right now. Yeah, we're probably a few tenths under 248. I already know that we're going to be tapered probably a couple tenths that way, as I've been talking about. But when we do the finish grind, the clamping pressure on this cube, I can tweak that in and get it lined up. So we'll be grinding the sine bar itself to the pins once the pin holes here are ground. .248 just wants to get started. Most of the dowel pins, they'll be up to 2 to 3 tenths over a nominal size. It seems like quite often it's about 2 tenths. And what I did, I tried to get some that were the smallest I could out of the box there. And that way, if it's a little bit of a loose fit on that, I can always move up to the next one. That might be a tenth or so bigger. That should be 249. And what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting this in half now. This will be 249 and a half, and we're going to just kind of sneak up on it. You got 249 goes in there real nice. And our dowel, you can tell there's definitely not going to go in at this point. What we're going to try to do is make that just a real light thumb, not a press fit, but kind of a thumb fit, if that's what we're going to shoot for. Should be about 2 tenths under 250 right now with this pass. Okay, that's a 250. It just goes in, but that may be undersized a little bit. These are minus pins. And boy, that just wants to get started. So what I'm going to do at this point, I'm just going to do a couple blank passes. Sometimes it will creep just a little bit on you, and hopefully that's what will happen. At this point, where if you're really doing something real fussy, you have to be very careful, because this is where you can either scrap a part out or have a good part. So if I would try to wind just a little bit to take this a little bit out, it may take a little too much. So when I'm that close, I always like to take blank passes. Let it spark out real good. Yeah, looks like our digital kind of messing up on us. Yeah, just a couple blank passes. It's a nice fit, but a little bit looser than what I was shooting for. But again, I use a smaller dowel pin, so I can go up with a dowel pin that's about a tenth higher. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to get me a marker, and I'm going to put me a mark right where it's the size. Because now I got to back this off. And I need to wind over 4 inches, and we'll go 4 inches and 8/10. Looks like we're just touching. Off camera, what I did, I stuck the pin in there and I mic'd over it, because in heat treat, if this warps a little bit and you only got 10,000 stock, and if it warped a lot and it wasn't ground proper, I might not have enough stock to clean up on that hole. So what I did, I mic'd it, and they were within a thou of each other, so I know that we're pretty darn good. If it was out a lot, and then what I would do is I would either balance that out, going, you know, if it's turned this way, you know, 3 or 4 thousandths, move over a half of that so that I'm half out on each hole. And then that was one of the little tricks that you can use to balance your stock out. In this case, I knew if I indicated that first hole, I'd have plenty enough stock, I should be okay. And if it's really far out, then you can regrind your block to line it up a little bit closer. There's no dimension that I have on the thickness of this part. So plenty of room to play with. Yeah, I probably should have checked center to center because it looks like we're in a little tight. It's hitting mostly on this side. So one step that I didn't do, I should have swept this, come over here and swept this and just see where it was at. You see our digital crept on us a little bit. Let me it crept on us again. I'll catch that in the last thousandth or so. I'm not sure if these are the table locks on this model or not. I'll have to play around with it. I'm learning a lot of this stuff as I go, just like the rest. Again, my experience has been on a Moore number 3. Close, that just about wants to start. You can see it's repeating pretty good. Well, we're very close to where we were on this hole right here. And it's just about the right size. The dowel just wants to start. And this pin is a little bit snug. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try to take a couple more blank passes, maybe even just one, and I think we're going to be right where I want to be. Our digital staying at 4 inches and 9/10 is right where we want it. Maybe a tenth over, but we'll see how good it comes out. Like you say, if I really want to just get this fussy and it's off a little bit, it'll be an easy thing to do now. I just have to grind it for a bigger pin. I can tweak that right on. This being a prototype, I'm not going to be too concerned with it. If it's within a few tenths, we're plenty good. I'm going to try to just pull that out just a little bit more. Number of blank passes, it's not moving. You can try to take a tenth more out is what I'm shooting for. There you go, just a little bit of a drag. It's about a tenth more from where I was, where it would have been too much of a press fit to where it's got drag on it now. Let's bring it over to the granite and let's check our accuracy. And I didn't get a complete 100%. I don't know if you can see that, Adam. Complete 100 in places, but on both sides there is 100% cleanup in some places, but not all the way. So the mistake I made over here, I should have threw a micrometer over that, or measured and see where the holes were, or swept the one hole another, and balance that out, because more than likely this grew in heat treat, and or the drill may have wandered a little bit, whatever. But if I would have moved over 3 or 4 thousandths that way, I would have had 100% cleanup on both holes. But it's actually going to work pretty nice. We'll move over to the granite and we'll check the accuracy. First thing I want to check, because I know I'm going to have a little bit of taper from this end to that end. This amp is set up so that each one of these marks is 25 millionths. From 0 to all the way over here is 1 inch. From 0 to this half mark is 50 or 5 tenths. Or yeah, okay, you got a thousandths from here, 5 tenths here, and you got 10 marks, so each mark is 50 millionths. So we're about -3. We're out maybe 1/10 and a half. Isn't too bad. About 3, and that's a low on the other side. Yeah, so we're about 1/10 and a half in this distance that we're off. Here's my baby cube. We're going to set this up just kind of so we can hold this. And this one I need to grind in again. But when you make these cubes, having a smaller one like that a lot of times works pretty nice. And let me see if I can get this set at an angle so you can see the amp as well as the measuring. Now, what we got going right now is I'm wanting to get this is real close to 0. And the closest gauge block stack I can get, this is about 50 millionths under 0. So if I take this 4-inch gauge block, and ring that to that, and our gauge block was about 50 millionths low. We're about 50 millionths low. This pin should read right on 0 if we got a good 4-inch. And you can see we're pretty darn close. We're within, on this side, we're -1, we're -5, so we're about 2.5 tenths off of our 4-inch measurement. Each of these marks being 50 millionths. Let's see, 0, okay, actually we're closer than that. We're about within about 1/10 and a half, if I figured my math right, of being right on 4 inches. And so that will be plenty close enough for this. If I wanted to tweak that in more than that, it starts getting more difficult, you know, fooling around with it more, but it can be done. What we'll do next, and I'll probably do this off camera, I'm going to jig grind this hole. And then when we put these things together, it'll fit from the one to the other, it'll pivot, and then I'll jig grind, or not jig grind, but I'll surface grind these pins so that they're maybe a few thousandths smaller than that. And because I started out with the smaller pins, I'm going to go up to probably about maybe a 50 millionths to 1/10 bigger. Just get a little bit tight, just that nice thumb fit in there. And that way I won't have to worry about the pins pulling out. I can always put just a little dab of Loctite on one of these if I want, but I prefer not to do that. When I jig grind this, it's going to be a similar process, but basically what I have to do is I got to establish a certain height from here to this surface. Now if I wanted to hit that on the jig grinder, in other words, I want a height from the granite up to the center line and a certain height from the granite up to there. If I try to jig grind that in, it's going to be a lot more difficult than if I would just jig grind that hole, and if I have stock on there, I can surface grind then to the center line. I have a lot more control over it, and again, using newer equipment. So this one's going to be a lot easier to establish because I don't have to go center to center. I just got to get it straight, and I just have to get a dimension so that the bottom of that dowel pin lines up with the same thickness of this right here. And so we'll do that off camera. The video's getting kind of long, but that is pretty much a process that we can use, that we use for jig grinding. And like I say, I'm a little rusty at it, and one of the mistakes I did make was I should have took a measurement over the center line, because in heat treat a lot of times 01 will grow about 1 thou per inch. We got 4 inches center to center, and I think that's probably about what we had, because I had about 10,000 stock, and it is cleaned up 100% most of the way around, but there's places on there where it's not quite cleaned up a little bit. So I should have realized that, and a mistake on my part, but we'll go from there. So anyways, what we'll do is off camera, I'll finish this part up, I'll get that finished up, and then what we'll do on our next video, we'll do the finished grind, getting it all fit together, and the finished grind of everything. So we hope you enjoyed. One thing I want to do is thank all of our subscribers and viewers. Different people have commented in the past that they stumbled across our site by accident. They said they wouldn't have known that it was there. They're finding a lot of benefit in the videos, and they wish that would show up more in the search engine. We don't really know what we need to do to get it to show up more. Michael Nash commented about in this last video that other YouTube machine is giving a shout out, and I just wanted to let him know. Randy Richards, he gave us a shout out a little while back, and so a lot of his subscribers, they saw the channel, and hopefully they benefit. And Randy, he's a super nice guy. We really appreciate that he gave us a shout out. He's got a real good channel. He's got a lot of nice stuff on there, so I encourage everybody to visit his channel and check it out as well. But I think we're probably just going to have to go word of mouth. If you know other people that would be interested in this content, shoot them a link to our site and let them know that what we're doing. We'd like to reach as many people as we can if it'd be a benefit to them. The more people that get a benefit from these videos, the better. And one of the reasons that we do the videos is so that we can help others that are learning the trade and or maybe working in areas, you know, if they're a mill hand or lathe hand and they're dabbling in surface grinding or something like that, that we can help them with some of those things. So we appreciate all of our subscribers and viewers and the comments and the participation. I've learned a lot from you guys in the past, and I know I'm going to learn a lot more in the future, and so we just want to thank you. So we'll see you next time.